No, mai haere mai e te whānau. A very warm welcome to you all tonight, and especially on International Women's Day, celebrating all the incredible women in our community. I'm Nicola Batossi, General Manager of MS Auckland, and I'm really pleased to host this really special session tonight, brought to you by a group of our incredible members. On screen with me is Tatiana Karaman. She is our service manager. Many of you will know her already, so it's wonderful to have her here tonight as well. So our webinar format is, tonight there will be a series of talks from all of our wonderful panelists, followed by a chance for questions and answers, or just typing a comment into the box to share with everybody else who's here tonight. So it is being recorded, and the recording will be available on our website in the next couple of days. So hopefully we can get our our panelists on screen. We have Amit, we have Claire, we have Rochelle, and Sarah and Tressa. So welcome to our wonderful speakers for tonight. They'll all be coming from quite different perspectives, but I'm sure they'll add lots of different values and ideas and experiences to the kōrero. So good evening, everybody, and welcome. Lovely to see you all here. Rochelle, are you happy to kick off with your story? We don't have any audio from you right at the moment.
That would be,
yeah, there we go. That's wonderful. I'll just turn myself off, but thanks, Rochelle. Rochelle is also one of our incredible peer support volunteers, so some of you may have met her in that context.
Hey, just getting my timer on my watch because I need sometimes to be controlled when I start talking about this stuff. So kia ora koutou, my name's Rochelle Cave. I feel really privileged to be here tonight to share my experience. Oh, and then everyone starts disappearing on the screen on you. That's weird. I hope the background's not too much. I just thought, you know, orange and all that. My journey, I'm sort of here tonight to share what it's looked like for me as the mum of 3 children who, when I was diagnosed 6 years ago, were considerably younger than they are now. So for me, it was quite a process, sharing my diagnosis with them, sharing what that might mean for them. And on the other side of that, coping myself with what that all meant potentially for me as a mum and the type of childhood that I wanted my children to remember having. That was a massive thing for me, was what impact was my diagnosis going to have on my children's childhood and their memories of that. So I had to make some really strong decisions really quickly about how I was going to approach that. And they didn't come easily. Like, those decisions didn't come that easily to me, and they didn't come without lots of tears and frustration and fear. And I think being able to have some really incredible people around me to support me in that process was really, really important around the decisions that I made and when I made the decision. Or I say I, but it was more of a we between my husband and I. And yeah, so because I had, you know, grand visions of incredible childhoods for all my children, and that I would be an active physical part of those as they grew up. And this diagnosis cast a massive shadow of doubt over that, whether or not how participatory I would be, how active I would be, how contributory I would be to their childhood, as at the time they were 12, 9, and Isla was only 2. So, I'm sorry, 3. So quite young, and I had big concern over what that might mean for my ability as a mum going forward with my children. But what I did find was that my drive to be that contributory, physically present, capable mum was also my drive in terms of me making decisions around my own well-being that enabled all of that. So that was probably the first part. And then it was how I tell my children that I have this neurological condition that can't be cured, and that I and they would be learning to live with that for the foreseeable future. And that was tough too, because again, they were so young, and how do you put something that big onto children so young when all you want them to do is to enjoy being a child? But what I learned from that experience was they wanted to help me as much as they possibly could at their own level, and that filled my heart. But they also had questions about what that meant for them. Like, did that mean they were going to get it? Did they mean that they were going to have to think about what might happen for them? Was it something that just because I was their mum, that meant they were going to develop it too, and they wanted to know all about that kind of stuff? So I definitely engaged the support services of the likes of the MS nurses and my neurologist in terms of supporting those conversations, and they had some really great support around that. So once that was all sort of clear and they were okay, it was just a matter of dealing with each thing as it popped up. And I'm very lucky. I am coming up to, this is my 7th year of diagnosis, and I remain disease modifying therapy free. So I'm medication free, and I'm relapse free. And my entire approach has had to be through diet and exercise. So that's had some really great positive aspects for my whole family as well. So, whilst I've had to sneak some things into their diet, there's also things that have been, quite openly shared with them about how much better it is for them, and how this will make them feel better, and might make them feel less tired, and all of these kind of things. So they've learned alongside me and all that. And I've, delved into growing and providing my own food in my backyard, and so that's been a really great experience to share with them. Oh, my watch is vibrating. I think I've got a minute spare based on that. So we've actually, whilst through what was started off as quite a scary process, we have learnt lots together as well, and that's been probably one of the most rewarding parts. Whereas what I thought would take a whole heap of stuff away from my journey as a parent and a mum, it's actually added a whole different dimension and a whole different variety of things that I've been able to teach my children. The other thing that I think it's really taught my children is resilience, and that you can still achieve, and when you focus on something and you work within your parameters, you can still achieve goals, and you can still participate in things that and capability that you set for yourself. So that's been a hard thing. I think one of the trickiest things I think I mentioned briefly is because I arguably in better physical condition than I was prior to having children, I'm almost sometimes they forget, and so they kind of, there's that it's that whole, oh mum, sorry, I really forget, because you look strong and you act strong and you you exercise every day, and I forget sometimes that I just have to back off you a bit and give you some space. So they've learned really quickly about what that looks like. And so, I think it's taught them a lot of empathy. And I think that's a really tough thing to develop in our children these days. And I think they've been able to establish the ability to understand, to not take on how I'm feeling, but understand how I might be feeling and why I might be feeling in certain ways. And I think that's been a real advantage. But it's a massive, evolving, constantly changing, juggling thing, because I also work 32 hours a week, and I'm manage my disease, and I have children, and I all of that kind of stuff. So it's busy, but it's in the same breath it's really rewarding, and it's doable. And I pride myself on the fact that I'm realistic about what I can and can't achieve, and that's how I work with it. I don't set things, I don't go setting goals that are way too crazy. I don't go setting expectations on myself or others of me that are too unachievable. So yeah, being realistic, it is doable. You can still provide a really rich, valuable childhood, learning and experiential childhood for your children despite this diagnosis, and that's definitely what I've learned. So that's me.
Thank you, Rochelle. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm not sure if we have an order who's going to be next. There are certain things that popped up from your story which are amazing. It's like being in a moment, and resilience is the word. That's the big word. So thank you.
Thanks, Rochelle. Marta, are you happy to share your story? That'd be wonderful.
Absolutely. No, that was really awesome, Rochelle. Really awesome. So for me, family is really the most important thing in my life. And MS is a part of that reality. I was diagnosed 14 years ago as a 22-year-old. At the hospital, I was told that basically, you know what, you've got MS, don't worry, it won't kill you, but you'll be in a wheelchair by 40. Those are the exact words I was told. And as a 22-year-old, I just kind of went, nah, let me calculate. 18 years means I'm going to be in a wheelchair at 40. That gives me, that's a lot of time to party and do what I want, travel the world or whatever, but I know now it's not the way to think. But like my parents were very supportive of me. I mean, they were very supportive of my dreams of wanting to travel, the world and go see places because I told them I want to do this on my 2 feet because I don't want to be pushed around and carted. And then they were very supportive of it, which I was very happy with. Mum kept sending me articles on foods and diets I should be eating and not just eating barbecue meat every day and not drinking as much as I did. Again, I slowly, it was a slow condition that came through. I didn't pay as much heed at the time, but like I said, it slowly kind of came on. I got married about 11 years ago now. My wife, she's also from a scientific background. She kept up the pressure, if not a bit more, for me to go see a neurologist, go get advice on new medication, because she was like, no, you can't live like this with nothing doing at all. And she, in 2017, we had our son, Jay, that was born. And funny enough, that was the year I had the most relapses in 1 year. Because till that time, if I had a relapse, I'd just take 2 weeks off sick from work, just jump on steroids, and boom. The doctor had given me a bottle just to keep at home. If I felt like I was getting a relapse, I could start on them. He was like, you know your body well enough now for you to have that bottle at home. But what it did was it made me miss out on that father-son bonding every time I had that relapse in that 1 year. And I had, I think, three of them in that 1 year. And I was out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And that was the year he was born. It got quite a bit to me. That same year, because my wife volunteers for the society and helps with things like their annual fundraiser. She was invited to a Christmas lunch. She forced me to go because I was still not really ready at that point, but she was like, she almost dragged me saying, no, you have to come. we went there, we found a seat at a table. Funny enough, it turned out to be the table of the board of the society. I was sitting next to Neil, who was the president at the time, and then there was who was it? Who was it? Wait, my memory center is affected. I'm sorry, but so I was sitting next to Neil and the vice president of the society. Now I know the name, and I'll come back to this. And then they pretty much kind of said, Louise. They said, Amit, you play sport, you're going to work full time, you're not doing anything with your life, you're still walking, you're running around. Why are you not doing anything? You need to go see, and then they literally wrote Jennifer Pereira and her details on a card and gave me and said, you need to make an appointment with her now. End of story, no discussion. My wife was obviously pleased. Went to see Dr. Pereira, and essentially she was like, why have you not come here? Which was really good. I mean, it got me on medication. I've been on medication, 4 years now. One of the other things that summer was just after Christmas, we went for a family walk to One Tree Hill, and we're walking, and I saw all these dads playing footy with their kids, and I was like, I want to do that, but I can't do that if I'm in a wheelchair. I want to do this. I need to do something about this, and that really was the turning point for me. Got me to go. I've been on medication for about 4 years nearly. In what is the month? Next month in April. So that's got my energy levels go up a bit more. And every year when we do the MRI and it comes back with no further damage to your brain, we celebrate. But it's good. I mean, as I'm getting older, it really, my son's now 5. We've drip fed him information over time, you know, with regards to my condition. He's aware that he thinks pa's nerves are broken, and you know, sometimes they just don't carry messages from here to there. So he slowly has understood that. He knows that there are days where I will be a lot more tired than others, and then I might not play with him as much as I do on every other day, like jumping off park benches and getting my hand almost fractured. You know, but I mean, it is good in the way that I can now share it with him. Last year, we shared it. So till last year, no one other than my parents, my grandparents, my wife and her parents knew about my condition, and about 4 mates that came to my wedding that I know for 20 something years now. No one else knew. And I started sharing that last year, starting with my cricket team, because even they started noticing that there are some days you can't even run between wickets, and then there are some days where you can, you know, score a lot of runs or run like nobody. And then I was like, okay, then they started realizing what it is. And I am very fortunate that, you know, all of the people that I've shared it with have been very interested in knowing what MS is, how it affects me. And to me, that is what family and is all about. Like, it's not just my family at home. It's my extended family, my uncles, aunts, cousins, you know, my mates, and you know, work, people at work now know. And then more than anything, it's the MS Auckland family that's really also helped me, because if it wasn't for that day where they wrote down Jennifer Pereira's card, I might never have gone seen anyone. So for me, I think that is what it is. And I'm glad that all of them have taken an approach which I want, which is, I don't want sympathy. You know, I'm not looking for sympathy. I don't want, oh, that poor boy, because I can still do things. I can still run around. I can still play sport, even though I have a bit missing, but you know, that is what it is. But you know, they know me for who I truly am, and that's what's important. Now we can joke about, you know, and me and my wife have an argument every now and then. She goes, "Can you not even think properly? Have you got half a brain missing?" And I go, "Yes, I do. Yes, I do." But that's not the point. But no, so that's really just me. And like I said, family has been really, really important in where I've got to now. That's me.
That's wonderful, Amit. Thank you so much for sharing. Our next speaker is Tressa. She's coming from quite a different perspective. Are you happy to share your story now, Tressa? You're still muted. There we go.
There we go. I've unmuted. Yes, thank you very much. And thank you to Chantal and Amit. It's so interesting listening and informative listening to your story. So I'm Tressa and I don't have MS, for which I'm very grateful. But my husband, Marty, who's sitting here beside me and who might be a little camera shy, he does have MS. So Marty is now 61 and he was diagnosed, so we're very recent into the family of MS. He was diagnosed in early 2019 at the age of 58. So it's interesting that Amit is here because I know from my research that it's more unusual for men to have MS than women, but obviously men do, exhibit A and exhibit B. But Marty is very unusual because he was diagnosed so late in his life or further on in his life, but not as a 22-year-old. Our son Emmett is 23 and my heart collapsed listening to you, thinking what we would do if he was diagnosed, which is a good way to jump forward to in our family situation. We have a son together, Stephen, who is 23 now, but luckily is not biologically related to us. So Chantal, we haven't had that dilemma or those questions about what would happen. I mean, obviously he could still get MS, but because he's not biologically related. The other thing that's different about Marty is that he doesn't have relapsing remitting MS. He has primary progressive MS. It took a long time for him to get the diagnosis. And I'm going to invite him to jump in and say anything that he wants to say. But from my point of view, I think that the length of time it took to get the diagnosis and all of the doctors, no, not all of the doctors along the way, but a lot of doctors and neurologists who spoke to him like he was some sort of a stressed out middle-aged man who couldn't do his cycling as fast as he used to be able to do because he was very fit and healthy as a young man, as a middle-aged man. And there was a lot of, or he experienced from that, a lot of discounting, which normally I think, you know, it's International Women's Day. Normally women get that from the medical professional, but he got it. And one of my, you know, the brief we were given as tips and tricks, that trauma of not being listened to and not being taken seriously actually lasts and endures. And if you are a support person, and there'll be support people on this call, if you're a support person, it's not in the past. It's not that happened to Marty several years ago and now they're taking him seriously because he has MS. It lasts. And I think as a support person, it's really important to go to the meetings, the few appointments that we have. It's really important to be there because it's really important, I think, as their carers to acknowledge the hurt that they have experienced and the marginalization that they have experienced. So I guess that would be one of my takeaway thing, is that kind of hurt isn't, we don't relegate it to the past. Like any hurts, we don't relegate it to the past. It is actually ever present. So today, just a few years on, so if Marty was diagnosed almost exactly 3 years ago now, he's now in a wheelchair full time. He's losing ability with his hands. He suffers from chronic pain, by which I mean every day he has to take painkillers to manage his pain. And he suffers from fatigue, which I mean every day he's fatigued and it's an effort. And increasingly in the last 6 months, I can see that he has the cognitive fog, as we call it, Emmett. But I wouldn't say, have you half a brain, because simply it wouldn't be a fair exchange of warfare, basically, at this point. We live with Stephen, our son, who's 23. And as I say, I'm very glad we didn't have to worry about his biological connection to this. And you're right, Chantal, I think that Stephen was always an empathetic person anyway, but this has really shown him, and it fills my heart with gladness when I see Stephen being so empathetic and loving towards his dad. Yeah, so that's Stephen. I wanted to, so I've talked about our initial reaction, and I wanted to make sort of 3 quick points. The first is, so I'm an academic, so I research. Like that's my response to anything in my life, and including in trauma. Or the other thing to just say to you is, a lot of this came to the head last year when I thought that my life as a carer was difficult. As I was increasingly not coping. Then in June last year, I myself was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So that really put the heat on our little Whānau in terms of keeping the situation going. And I'm now in the middle of chemotherapy. So my prognosis is very good, and it's interesting. Someday I'll write a book about the difference between a chronic disease that there isn't currently funding to deal with, and a disease like cancer, which is traumatic, there's no question about it, but there's a lot of attention paid to me. A lot of people understand about a brain tumor, there's a start and a finish to it. But I wanted to just mention to people this idea that I've come across about ambiguous grief. So the grief in the family is different for everybody, and people move at different speeds or at different phases about grief, about this. So we were coming up to 60 years old. We had just downsized. We'd bought a batch. We were ready to embark on our not quite child-free life, but you know, the work was done. So there's a lot of grief about that, quite apart from anything else. But ambiguous grief is an idea about that in the community, people can understand if your husband dies, or if your husband has cancer and he's going to die, people understand that. Or if he's going to get better, people understand that. But when you're just sick, and you're going to be sick forever, and there are no highs and there are no lows, people find it very hard to engage with that. And we find it very hard to have words about that grief. So I just want to flag, there's a lot of literature on it, and later, if anybody wanted to get in touch with me to get some references, I'd be very happy. So there's a lot written about it in terms of people with dementia, because the person is there but not there, or children who are taken and disappear. They're not gone from your life. How do you restart your life? Do you restart your life? So that's sort of really my first point, is to be aware of this idea of ambiguous grief. And that really helped me to understand why I could be in grief, but not have lost my husband. The second point I want to make is about this idea of, and I mean, I do not mean this as a criticism, Nicola, to this idea of silver lining. We don't have to have a silver lining. We don't need to have the energy to uplift ourselves and say, but it's really great that, and I know I've already done that because I've said it fills my heart when I see Stephen with such empathy and love for his dad. But, you know, we don't have to have silver lining. We can just go, this is shit. And that's okay. And there'll be other days when we can see a silver lining. So don't, I would say, don't carry the weight of having to make other people feel better by going, oh yeah, no, Marty's in a wheelchair now, but it's an electric wheelchair, or Marty's in a wheelchair now, but we've got a ramp into the house. We don't need to do that. We can just go, Marty's in a wheelchair now. And I am grateful for the support we get and for the ramp we have and for the electric wheelchair. I am grateful for all those things, but I don't need to diminish our grief in when I make that point. On tips and tricks, there's lots. So there's a very good Facebook page for the caregivers among the audience. There's a Facebook page that I found that is the Knowledgeable MS Caregiver Guild, and it's run by 4 caregivers. I think that they might be Canadian based. They're certainly North American, and many of them are Canadians. And I'm so sorry if there's North Americans in the audience. They're very North American in that, you know, they spill their guts in a way that I would never on a public forum. But that's actually helpful when you're just sort of surfing them and listening to what they're saying. And as a caregiver, I found it very helpful because they give shout outs to each other. So sometimes people will just say things like, having a really bad week. And then all of these people will pile in and say, you've got this, girl, you're so awesome. Next week, you're going to look back, and whatever. It's just a community, online community. And again, I'd be happy to send that link to people if that was helpful. Another thing as a caregiver is, and this is a trick I got from the Cancer Society in the face of my own diagnosis, is when people do say, what can I do to help? You're kind of left with this thing of, well, what can they do to help? But if you just keep a list anyway, either on your notes on your mobile phone or on the notice board at home in the kitchen, and just say, you know, it turns out Marty really loves Anzac cookies. And that would be awesome if you could make him a batch of cookies, or any kind of bloody cookies that you want, so long as I don't have to make them. And it's a little bit of a treat for him that isn't a shop pack of cookies, right? So it can be from that to things like, could you call by and have a coffee and a chat to him? Could you take me out and we could get our nails done, or whatever. So make a list of things, and people could even choose from those things. The other thing I would say, and then I'm going to stop, I wasn't as organized as Chantal, so I didn't press my timer on the phone. So what I would say is, you need to, as a caregiver, again, you need to prepare a long time in advance. Because things take a long time. So it takes a long time to get a ramp or an even surface into the house. It takes a lot of planning to get a wheelchair that's exactly suitable. It takes a long time to change your bed. By the time even if you have the money to do it, by the time you investigate it and research it and do all the other things that you're supposed to do, and you figure it out, and sometimes in the beginning for me, it felt fatalistic to do those things. And then I would end up months behind the 8 ball, or whatever the sporting analogy would be. Amit, help me out here, whatever. And if you do it in advance, you know, so I have some stuff in the house that, you know, it's been there for months and Marty hasn't needed it. Well, that's fine. So what? That's okay. So prepare a long time in advance. And then finally, I know I said that was my last point, but here's my last point. When your box is full as a caregiver, your box is full. You just simply have to say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Whether that's making dinner or ironing something that you would have once ironed, but and that's a long way of saying, just say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do it. So that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Teresa. That's incredibly powerful and helpful to hear your perspective and your insights. So thank you. And thank you, Marty, probably slightly out of shot. Sarah, are you happy to share your story now? We can't hear you.
There we go. I'm new to Zoom. Believe it, I got all the way through the pandemic and I'm new to Zoom. Okay, I'm Sarah. I have had MS. I was diagnosed in 2006, but I had my first episode at the end of the previous year when I was 2 weeks short of having a baby. So my youngest Joey was obviously due very shortly, and my other son was a 2-year-old toddler. So I think that there are silver linings for me. When I was, if I wasn't pregnant, I wouldn't have, I said it to my husband just the other day, if I wasn't pregnant at the time, I wouldn't have gone and got it checked, because it would be one of those things I really need to talk to the doctor about this. And so my MS has been quite mild. I've had it, 2006. My young fella is now 16, so it's been a while. He's had MS in the family all his life. But I have relapsing remitting, and the blessing is it has been mild. Also, that I actually did discover it while I was pregnant, because that's the first reaction, oh my gosh, the baby, and so you go and get it checked. But the other blessing was it forced a lifestyle change for us. So we moved from the heart of Mount Wellington, right on Lanav, where the quarry is. Well, it was a quarry when we were there, and they had advertising for that retail space. 20,000 plus cars a day will drive past this down the street, and we're like, that can't be good for my health, it can't be good for the health of these young children. So we went rural, and you couldn't get more rural. There were like no neighbours, and it was quite a sharp learning curve, because the thing is, I couldn't do a proper job. My previous work was professional work and management, but I couldn't guarantee that my fatigue wouldn't come just on Mondays, or it wouldn't come on, Wednesday afternoons. You can't plan it. I couldn't do part-time because I couldn't control the fatigue. So we just resigned the facts. Stay-at-home mum with limited capabilities. And then what happened was I started gardening because I wanted to grow fresh food, get a bit of exercise and be healthy for me. And what that did is it morphed into, for me, a new career, because now I'm a garden writer. I have a very large gardener of 36 raised vegetable beds. I am the brand ambassador for Gardena and Yates, and I write for Kiwi Gardener magazine. I've written 3 gardening books, and this has all come about since the MS, because I have a career that fits in around my health. And so I work from home, and I have written from bed before. It's easy to do. I don't have to, I'm having a down day today. I've spent most of it in bed, but yesterday I did too much. But the thing is, for the kids, they've had it all their life. They've had to work harder than other kids. They've had to make their own lunch and make their own beds, and they work harder, but that's just how they are. And now my oldest has left home, and he's 18 and doing his own thing, and he's fully self-sufficient because he's pretty much been that way all their lives. They've had to work harder than their peers. But yeah, it's the thing, one of the specific things that we did have with the kids when they were really little is, well, primary school age, is we talked about MS as a family, like the family had it, because it impacted all of us. If I was tired, then I couldn't mum properly, and then dad would have to step in and be dad more, and mum, and you know, the kids had to step up. So the family had it, it impacted all of us. And so then a young girl in the kids class at school got cancer, and then all of a sudden it was like, well, she's a child and she got cancer, and so we've got MS. And then they started to, like, my oldest started to really fret. And so what it was the language that we were using that actually impacted his thought patterns and actually freaked him out. So the MS Society was really good. They've got a really good book for kids called Myelin is Getting on My Nerves or something, and there's all these activities and explains it all to them. And so we had to separate out that, you know, no, actually mum's just got it, you don't have it, but it impact, you know, it's about language. And then along the same language lines is, it's really hard for my husband to hear every day, or almost every day, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired. There's only so many ways you can say I'm tired without, you know, hearing it. So we came up with a word, a trigger word, it's like the elephant's back in the room, or, you know, things like that, so that it just changes the way it's being heard. Because there's tired, you know, like, oh, I've been working hard, I'm tired, and then there's like, I'm really tired, it's different. So the language we use in the family kind of helps with the dynamic of it all. But yeah, so things like that. So I'm on Tech for Dedra now, which is really good. But the problem is, because I was kind of mild and I didn't like to bother the MS nurses, because, you know, you're busy, you phone them up there, you get the answer machine, so they're obviously very busy. But not telling them what was going on in my life almost was a barrier to getting the pills, because you had to show that you had had episodes and incidences along the way, and I hadn't been doing that. So we had to wait for an incident to allow for me to qualify for the pill. So what I'd recommend is, if something weird happens, whether it is or not, just flick them an email. Hey, it's Sarah, I've just noticed this really weird thing. Don't know if it's MS or not, but hey, I just want to let you know. And that way they've got a record of what's going on. You've not bothered them, it's just an email. And that way, you know, all the little things get documented. So that was one of the things that, and the other thing as well, I mean, I've had it a while. I mean, I'm 16, coming up 17 years. I don't dwell on it anymore. I mean, when I first started, I was a voracious, like, what is this? And I need to know all the things. And now I have it, but it does not have me. I'm an independent, strong woman who knows how to listen to my voice and stop when it, you know, listen to my body. And when it tells me to stop, I stop. But if I dwell on the MS and I find myself associating with everything MS related, it almost sucks me into it, if you know what I mean. It's not who I am, it's what I have. I would much rather be identified as a gardener, or as a mum, as a woman. But so there, yeah, I don't identify with it in that. It's the biggest blessing I've ever had. It's changed my life. I have a lifestyle I love, and I just get tired sometimes. So, and it's really annoying. And I make no secret of it. People know that I have MS. It's on my social media. I'm not afraid to tell people. That's it. So, yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks so much. And on Sarah's blog, there is one story about gardening and your MS, which maybe we'll share it again on our Facebook page tomorrow, because it's really cool. Thank you. Now we have Claire, who has a different perspective on family life with MS. Claire, are you happy to share your story and your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to listen to everybody talk. I think I can relate. Initially when Rochelle was speaking, I was really felt like I was, you know, because my dad was diagnosed, I was around 9, And you know, I was just really it was really interesting to hear about how you educate your children, and how, you know, they've really gained a lot of positives from, you know, from the illness, in they've had a lot of takeaways and made them stronger as individuals. But I can also relate quite a lot to Tressa as well, because my dad also had primary progressive MS. And honestly, it's been something that I've not really felt like I was ready to talk about in any capacity. And, you know, when you were sort of getting upset there, it's really real to me. And I still vividly remember the day that we came into my parents' bedroom, and my mum and dad sat me down, and me and my sister down, and they were like, you know, your dad has MS. I mean, it's at 9 years old, it doesn't mean anything. I don't know what that is. It doesn't, I don't know how that's going to impact me in any way. And it wasn't, I guess there's lots of things that, I mean, me and my dad were really close, like really, really close. And so I was always a daddy's girl. And I guess the thing that I struggled with was accepting that the things that he couldn't do, and realizing it sort of now. I'm on the other side. I'm sort of 34 now, sort of realizing around 30 that I was quite angry towards my dad, because I was angry and frustrated that I couldn't fix it, and that he couldn't do the things that I felt like as a dad he should be able to do. And so I carried that around for quite a bit, and, you know, questioned myself, and you know, it was really sort of a cause of quite a lot of upset for me personally. But, you know, I think I was just so fortunate to have a dad, he was incredible. He was one of those people that he was so tenacious. He wouldn't accept. He didn't want help. He didn't want people to do things for him. He wasn't having a bar of that. You know, we would go, he was really affected by the heat. So, you know, we always used to make a joke in the house that it was Baltic, because he would refuse to put the heating on. Obviously, as a kid, I would just whine him up about that. And, God, I'm freezing. And he's like, Claire, put more layers on. I'm like, oh, it's so annoying. You know, so there's that. It was really, and I just remember all the little things that we used to do together. We would, you know, he would just, because his hands were quite shaky, he would make me like a hot cross bun, but he would like chop the butter off, and then it would be just this big, thick block of butter, and be like, he's like, here you go, Claire. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, at 11 years old, it was quite, I was loving it. But he got I think the biggest struggle for him was getting his first wheelchair. He, not that there's a lot of comedy that comes with the story, but we went away to a holiday park, and he would have these, it was a collapsible wheelchair, so you pop the wheels off and collapse it and put it in the back of the car. So we were walking around, and he decided to take a shortcut, and the shortcut basically was like a hill that was almost vertical, and he decided to just gun down that hill, and the wheels were just doing this, and I was like, oh my God, he's gonna like project out of the wheelchair. And he was just like, oh, it's fine, we're all good. Like, okay. So he was just very, you know, I think he got diagnosed when he was like 35, and he was in there was a lot of changes that went on in the household at the time. So we had a two-story house. So when my dad he sort of became limited with his movement. He was in a wheelchair a lot more. And so what we had a stair lift, and we had like the full adaptation for the bathroom. And my mom was working full time. And so where a lot of the caregiving came in was when I used to come in from work. And I guess my dad was almost like a stay-at-home dad, in terms of he would have the dinner, he would be responsible for the dinner. He liked to be able to do that, and you know, take care of us, take care of the kids. Like, so when I got home, and his wheelchair, his stair lift would continually break down. It was just so tedious. And so I would find him on the stairs, you know, and I have to, you know, I mean, I was only 9. Well, no, how old was I? 12, maybe I might have been 12. But I mean, he was a 6'1" man. So to try to lift him back on a stair lift is quite a challenge. And I think it was quite, it was quite hard to see him in that vulnerable, in such a vulnerable way when I know him, when, you know, my memories of him are of, you know, being strong and supporting us as kids. And I just, there's lots of things that I had to assist with, like, you know, when he would regularly fall down, he would, you know, there would be issues in the bathroom that I would have to assist with. And it's like, you don't think about anything else. There isn't any thought process. It's just, I'm helping that person. I'm just here, and we just need to just get pushed through this. And we didn't really talk about that side of it. And, you know, I think in terms of what would have made my childhood easier, maybe it would have been easier if there was more conversations around MS. I mean, my mom's a nurse, but I mean, she was working full time. You know, I just wish that I'd been able to get more information about it as a young child. I mean, we had one of the great things that I was, you know, I'm actually one of the great things that we had was the Young Carers Club in the UK. It was really good because a lot of the kids, they were sole carers. You know, they were maybe like 16 or 17 years old. They were looking after their single parent, and you know, it just to sort of distance yourself from that scenario and just have that kind of break. You know, it was really important for especially if you're the sole primary carer, just to kind of, you know, even like what Tressa was saying, just to give someone something, or just to kind of take them out for a coffee. That's kind of what this Young Carers thing was about. It was just about sort of a collective of people who all understood where you were coming from. And, you know, even if you were, so a lot of them were quite young. And yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's just, I'm doing a run in May, hopefully, if it goes ahead. And that was the catalyst that started me to sort of reach out and try to integrate myself into MS Auckland, just to try to, because I was sort of ready to be, you know, like to involve myself and speak to people about, you know, my experiences and things like that. So I'm really, well, I've got $1,280 so far, so hopefully it goes ahead, and I've just got like two months to go, so it's really quite exciting. So I guess that's sort of my story.
Thanks, Claire. That just adds such a different dimension. It's wonderful to hear your story. And yeah, your run in Hawke's Bay and during May is pretty exciting. We wish you all the best for your training, and it's just so neat that you're doing that in memory of your dad as well, and to help support us. I really invite anybody who's here tonight to share any comments or questions. Tatiana, do you want to add anything?
I would just like to say a big thank you to all our panelists in sharing your stories, such a powerful stories in each and every family. And as I said earlier, the words that are standing up are resilience and compassion and communication skills that are very individual and very, you know, for each whānau. And as we all know, MS is individualized journey, but brings everybody together. And Tressa, I'm glad you mentioned envious grief. There is also disenfranchised grief. That is very, very similar. It's all about the loss that it's not acknowledged. And there is a lot of grief underlined of, you know, every illness, and in MS community as well. So thank you again. And yeah, reality and not silver lining it. It's very important to remember, just being real and finding a way.
Thank you. We do have one question. What was the resource book that Sarah mentioned for kids? I have a 6 and 3-year-old who hear mummy is tired a lot.
Do you want me to answer that? It was called Myelin is Getting on My Nerves. And I did get it from the MS Society, but having said that, it's probably about 10 years ago. I'm not sure if they still have it, but yeah, it's aimed at, I think my kids were 5 and 7 when they had it. So it's got a cute little nerve-shaped cartoon character racing around in a car. So, yeah.
Wonderful. And somebody else has just posted a message of thanks. So unless anybody else has anything else to add or contribute to the discussion or ask for post any questions. Oh, what was the name of the carers website? It was a Facebook group, I think.
Yeah, so it's a Facebook group, and I'm not so hot on Facebook, but I looked it up this afternoon, and if you just search on Facebook for the Knowledgeable MS Caregiver Guild, and I can put that into our chat feed now. But also, while I have the floor, I did have a question, but sorry, I put it into chat, which is what is the way, how do we sponsor Claire on the run?
I just put the link in there and they give a little, I'm not sure if that did that come through in the chat on the side?
I don't see it yet.
Maybe
I think you only sent it to me directly, Claire.
I'm not sure if that happened. Oh my God.
How many panelists does it take to run a chat room?
How long is it like a marathon or a half or like
half marathon?
Yeah. Girl.
It's certainly on our Facebook page. So if you search for it, we've posted a few times. Maybe I'll pop it up again tomorrow.
Because I did one not long after, well, a little while after my diagnosis. It was one of my goals, and it's a real journey. So I can totally understand all the training that you're doing.
Yeah, and then the in between that was the whole getting COVID. I was like, oh no, the training's ruined.
No, I didn't have COVID to deal with, thankfully. Yeah,
I
chose a really flat course. Like I didn't go for some crazy uphill downhill marathon course. It was like, no, it's got to be pretty much flat.
Where was it?
I did the Gold Coast one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
awesome.
So it was very cool. So, but yeah, Napier would be just as flat, or do they take in the hills?
Like a winery or something. Someone said there is one hill.
Yeah, the back there, Yeah, it's not too bad. You'll be fine.
Okay, cool.
Does it also have like a end point at the winery so you can have a few wines afterwards?
I mean, here's hoping. Instead of water, they're giving you out wine. I'd accept all that.
Yeah. It's great.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for taking the time tonight to join us, and happy International Women's Day. Thank you, everybody. Take care, and an enormous thanks to our wonderful panel tonight. You're all incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.